Commissioner Roth?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Nocita?
Here.
Commissioner Mum?
Here.
And Mayor Neely.
Here. We'll go ahead and proceed. Anything for future agenda items? Well, my screen is blank, so we'll go ahead and proceed on to what we have here on the agenda. And the first discussion item is the use of electronic devices during meetings. There was some concern expressed both in terms of people who weren't at commission meetings, but people who are also at commission meetings, and I'm talking about people that were involved in telephone conferences, as to the use of electronic equipment. And it's been noticed by some that sometimes we have our laptops here, and there's concerns about whether we're engaged in either communications with individuals or engaged in activities that aren't related to the city commission. And so it's really a discussion of whether we're going to proceed on a resolution that's going to cover these issues. And I guess I'll refer to the city manager, or you can refer to anybody you want. We've got a copy of the resolution in front of us.
Yeah. Well, the commission also has rules that you recently adopted about that, and I think the rules restrict the use of electronic devices to only things that I guess are before you on your screen.
Yeah.
Nancy, do you have anything to add?
No, it is Section 8 of the rules, which is the resolution that you have there, if you need to read that. It's more of a perception, I believe, for the public.
Yeah,
you know,
you're
if
right.
they think that you're getting more information from outside the building during a meeting, it's just a perception issue as well. So that's part of that as well.
Well, we are. Let me just pose the question. We are assigned laptops, and we may have things that we want to refer to on the laptops that are specifically of relevance to what we're dealing with here. And I think we got to clarify that might be an appropriate use. So I'd like some discussion about that.
Okay. It could also be disclosed at that point too.
Right.
That if you are using information, you know, that you have found on your laptop, that it should be disclosed, since you have approved these rules to not. So I would think that would be important to do. And then another comment from our city attorney was that when the commission hears a quasi-judicial matter, that it is limited to the record, and the use of any electronic devices could present a problem in those circumstances. So, you know, if you're getting more information during a closed record, then that's an issue as well. You don't want to be bringing in new information when the record has been closed during a quasi-judicial hearing.
I think if a person has new information that they've received, the issue is fairly simple. You simply just send it into the city, and it becomes part of the record. Any questions about this?
Yep. No.
Okay. With that, next item is the Oregon City Tourism Council discussion and appointment liaison. Now, it's been delegated to me here as the person responsible, but I am going to ask the commissioner on my right, Commissioner Rocky Smith Jr., to go ahead. He is the liaison, and I think he could give us more of a feeling what the Tourism Council proposals will be and what the TAP funding represents.
I thought I was until I saw here appointment of the liaison. I
Well,
thought,
you
maybe.
are.
Okay, good.
You are appointed. There.
You
You were a duly appointed person.
Well, I've been doing it anyway.
I may have unintentionally made the appointment in private, but it's not public, so you are the liaison.
Okay. There's gonna. This is a presentation in part on a couple of different things, but it involves a little bit of a background into what I've been working on for the last, I don't know, however many months. and it's starting to come to solidify a little bit, and that's exciting. So a couple of things I want to talk about. The Oregon City Tourism Council as it existed in the past. Some of the other organizations and meetings that have been taking place in the last year. TAP, which is the Tourism Action Plan, which is a plan that allows Oregon City as a community to receive grant money or funds from the Tourism Development Council for tourism projects. So all of these conversations are kind of intertwined and together. I'm going to tell you how it all kind of has been ironed out, at least, and what we kind of propose to go forward with. The heritage community in Oregon City is, to say the least, hard to describe. And a lot of people come to me or to ask, well, what group does this? Or what group is in charge of this museum? Or what the heck is this committee? I don't even know what this group is. And I usually can answer it, and if I don't, I ask Thelma. And I think Thelma has been working, and I've seen parts of it. I think Thelma's been kind of slowly creating a document that tells what all these groups are and what they're in charge of and how they work together and whatever.
It's slowly, right?
It's slowly, yeah, very slowly. Okay, so with that, when I talk about the TAP plan or the TAP money, the TAP money refers to money coming from TDC, Tourism Development Council, to allow the community to do tourism projects. Some communities operate that through their Chamber of Commerce's, and in our case, we operated that through the city, through Michelle Benville, who basically was assigned to help distribute the TAP money because she's already in a position to deal with OCCIT, which is also tourism money, and the Metro Enhancement. So in 2003, a plan was actually created under Alice Norris and the Tourism Council, Oregon City Tourism Council at that time. A plan was created, and that is on the screen, on our screen under what it says 2011 TAP. That document is actually the TAP plan that was originally created in 2003, but then updated in 2010. So last year.
Could have chosen a better picture.
I think Alice chose that.
I'm sure she did.
So when we're talking about the reformation or the reactivation of the Oregon City Tourism Council, it was running and operating up through partway through 2010. So we're not talking that this is like the Arts Commission that's kind of been out of the loop. Why did the Tourism Council really stop meeting? Well, because the entire purpose of the Tourism Council was really to facilitate the TAP plan and decide where our TAP monies were going to be spent. There was some unclarity and some kind of a relook at the county level to decide whether or not that process was going to keep continuing. And at the same time, all of the museums were struggling and working to just survive. And then Alice Norris's term ended. And so there was a couple things that happened that the Tourism Council really stopped meeting because there was no purpose to meet until we found out what the future was going to be with the TAP funding. So it was kind of in a standstill. At that time, I was still continually engaged in heritage meetings. So I used my liaison title as Oregon City tourism person, basically to attend community gatherings, which had started to kind of ask the question, how do we all work as a heritage community together? Those heritage gathering meetings that a lot of you attended at some point slowly refocused itself into a new committee that we called the Sites Committee, which because, and when I say sites, I mean heritage sites. And that was so that those heritage sites could start working together on how do we work together as a team in the future to promote Oregon City in general. So that was all happening. Those sites include several organizations, McLaughlin Memorial Association, which underneath of that umbrella is McLaughlin House, Barclay House, Rose Farm. We had Clackamas Heritage Partners, which also is doing business as Historic Oregon City, which is the umbrella over the Visitor Center at the EOTIC. We have Clackamas County Historical Society, which oversees Stevens Crawford and the Museum of the Oregon Territory, and city level Ermitinger House. So all those groups have been attending regular meetings. Representatives from those groups have been attending regular meetings that we've been calling the Sites Group. Okay? And so we were actually, for the first time, really seeing success in having a dialogue as a core group about Oregon City. As we realized that group was really going to start working together and really saw some fruition happening with that, we're like, okay, now it's time to get Main Street and the Chamber into that loop too, because they hadn't been in that same loop. In various ways we have overlap, but never together all at one time. So the Sites Committee had been talking about how do we get the Chamber and Main Street into this dialogue of working and promoting Oregon City tourism. Well, it just so happened that TDC was hosting I can't remember what the name of it was. They were hosting a trade show basically for promoting heritage sites around the county. So each of these communities that get TAP money were allowed to showcase their community to the rest of the county. So because this sites group has been formed, we said we can do that. Chamber wanted to do it because they're definitely refocusing in history and wanting to, I shouldn't say history, in terms of tourism, and Main Street as well. So at the sites level, we kind of said, well, wouldn't this be a great way to test if we can all work together? So Chamber, Main Street, and all of the heritage sites worked together to produce this booth for the trade show. Went amazing. We had the most attendance of any other community there. We also won the best display as voted by the people that attended the trade show. So we left there really feeling good about not only the fact that we were starting to work all together again to rebuild this tourism in Oregon City, but really feeling like we had a new start. I don't remember if it was just after that or right at the same time TDC basically announced that there was going to be the TAP money available and that process was going to happen. So now that we knew that the TAP money was going to be available, I said, well, basically now this Oregon City Sites group that has been assembled with the Chamber and Main Street is essentially the Oregon City Tourism Council again. And maybe we should reform that as it was, make sure that that group was working together, look at the TAP plan, which we haven't done yet. We just wanted to initiate this group. And it just so happens now in August, that TDC is going to ask whatever representatives from all these communities to come to a meeting to discuss the TAP plan. So we're right here ready to go for this to happen. So what I'm coming to the commission tonight with is really a structure of what this tourism council will be, or what we intend it to be. This is a draft, which is actually completely drafted on the original to most degree. I think Alice can attest to that. It's really, we took the original, what were the partners originally of the Oregon City Tourism Council, and it says here on the original TAP plan. The original TAP plan was prepared, 3-day workshop sessions held in June and July of 2003. The following is an annual revisit to the plan by the Oregon City Tourism Council. The Tourism Council consists of representatives from Oregon City Heritage Organizations, Oregon City Chamber, Downtown, River Shore Hotel, PGE, so businesses, visitors, and it lists all these things. So essentially we're asking to keep that the same. And I just included that TAP plan because that's what we'll be using as a guide to decide where this $20,000 goes. In terms of the actual Tourism Council, if you look at the draft, it says draft Oregon City Tourism Council proposal. This is what we basically propose to do. It talks about that in the beginning, basically, that we've been meeting for the last several months discussing all these different things about Oregon City and tourism and how to work together to promote Oregon City. And that we have, in that time, agreed to work together under this mission. The Oregon City Tourism Council shall develop and promote tourism for the benefit of visitor experiences, social, educational, and economic vitality of the community of Oregon City. Membership in Oregon City Tourism Council shall be open to tourism-related heritage, business, and City of Oregon City stakeholders who are willing to partner together in a cooperative effort to fulfill the mission statement. So the $20,000 for tourism in Oregon City is going to be discussed by these tourism entities at Oregon City and representatives from business, chamber, and everything. And how do we want to work together to spend this money? It's not about one of the museums saying, well, we're going to spend it on our museum. It's about all of us saying, this is what we're going to do for the benefit of the whole city. It could be that in years past, the focus was festivals, and so, money was delegated. There's a list here of some of the expenses of the past years that Oregon City Tourism Council spent its TAP money on. For trolley operations. Why? Because the trolleys help all those sites and connecting all those sites together and bringing people to all those sites. Like I said, in 2005, 2006, it was decided that we had all these great festivals in Oregon City getting started, so the Tourism Council decided it was best to designate a certain amount of money for each of those festivals. So we have not developed an idea of what the $20,000 for this coming year would be. Last year's 2010-2011 part was for trolley operations, and $12,000 of it was for signage for the new Willamette Terrace and Greenway Trail. So basically, we were, under Alice Norris, definitely talked about the fact that we had, and you see prior to that was the promenade. We had all these amazing city projects that were happening where all these things were going to be done, but missing key elements. To spend millions of dollars to see the promenade redeveloped and not have any signage to tell anyone it's there, or to spend millions of dollars on Main Street and the bridge and the terrace and not have a connection to those things for people to see. So, what we want to do is implement this plan and then create basically, we want to look at the plan, we want to look at what's this year's projects, what do we see as the Tourism Council working together. So the listing there is a draft. These are the elements, or these are the positions or the people that we want included in this discussion. We want a representative from business. The representatives on the top that are named, some of them are already in place, and some of them are either going to be asked or, encouraged highly. And we talked about how these structured would break down, and I think we're open to whatever you suggest. But definitely we wanted a business focus. We talked about that definitely being possibly connected through the chamber. The representative from the city would be myself as the liaison. And as far as I remember, the city liaison wasn't a voting member, was really just a liaison between this group and kind of facilitating the group of what do we do with this tourism money, and then bring that proposal really to the city to say how do we do that, or how we make sure it happens. The Main Street, Lloyd has been in the email loop. I don't know that he's been in a meeting yet to discuss that, but he really needs to be on board with that, and I think he is. Heritage, we talked about all the sites that are already working. CCHS, which is Clackamas County Historical Society, Lisa Christopher. McLaughlin Memorial Association, Mike has been attending. He's on the board from the MMA. That's Rose Farm, McLaughlin House, Barclay House. CHP, Gail has been attending. Dan has also been attending. But he didn't want his name on there. I think thinks he's in too many other things or something. I don't know. Stevens Crawford House, which really falls under CCHS, but they operate to some degree kind of individually, and so we kind of recognize the importance of having them have their own voice too on there. Lodging, there's a real key to keeping the lodging loop to this because it's similar to OCCIT, where this money is coming from the county, really based on putting heads in beds, and as Alice would say, right? Bringing people in to town.
There's two parts. It's heads in beds, butts and seats.
Heads and beds, butts and seats. And we've listed this in the past in Oregon City Tourism Council. We listed it as sports, and other times we'd listed it as recreation and kind of other titles. So right now we're kind of saying recreation and sports, and people might say, well, why sports? Recreation is pretty easy because we have the river fishing, kayaking, and all these other things. The sports reason that's always been incorporated into our thought with Oregon City Tourism Council is because of the basketball tournaments that host here at the high school that bring in thousands of people from all over the West Coast and even the United States. And so they've always kind of been in that thought process. Restaurants, we thought about tours and members at large. So if you see those seats, if you will, on the end don't have names next to them, because we really want to have people from those, and we need to discuss maybe who those people are. Now, Oregon City Tourism Council itself, once it's formed, will be the marketing agent for tourism-related activities within the Oregon City area. That means advertising the city as a whole. That doesn't mean that group is going to advertise what I'm saying is all the other museums are going to have their own advertising and do their own thing. But when it comes to spending money out of this fund, it's going to be for the whole.
For the whole group.
All right. That's basically the proposal. One of the things I wanted to retouch on is that the concern from staff was that in bringing some of these things back, like the Arts Commission, that's a whole different animal than this is. This is not really requiring any additional staff time at all. What happens really is if the commission approves we'll obviously do this at a future meeting, but if the commission is okay with this, the city commission is okay with the Oregon City Tourism Council proceeding forward, once that group is assembled, we will look at the TAP plan. We will create a plan for this year with what we want to do with the $20,000. That will have to be solidified through paperwork with an MOU at the county, and there's actually a meeting in the second week of August that a representative from the Oregon City Tourism Council needs to go to, and then that council, our council, will put the paperwork together. Now, Alice, I think, has done the paperwork for the most part in the past, and I think is willing to help assist us in some way. I don't know that. Okay. Well, through emails and stuff, I know we've kind of. But that document is not a staff document. That's the committee. The council puts that together, and the staff work is through Michelle in terms of the finances and distributing the money. The only other staff time would be if some of that money was allocated for staff projects like the terrace or the other things that we had. Did you get my email? I saw you standing on the side of the road the other day. We got an extension. We got an extension for the signage at the terrace because the deadline was coming up. We got an extension for that, and they're getting the signage ready for the terrace. And I was driving down the road and I saw Nancy out there with, I don't know who it was.
The consultant.
Okay. With plans for what the signs were going to look like, and I wanted to see them, and I was going the wrong direction on McLaughlin. I couldn't find a parking place, and I gave up. But I do want to see them.
They're hanging in the
Okay.
in my office area.
Rocky,
so
I have
anyway-
a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you talk about implementing, do you know if does this group have a set of bylaws right now? Or
Did
anything
we
like
have?
that? It's kind of so it's an ad hoc committee, right? Because if it's an ad hoc committee, it wouldn't necessarily need to be created by resolution or ordinance, or there wouldn't.
It never had its own. I don't know.
Is that how you'd like to? If you can keep it on an informal basis like that, or we can have the city attorney draft up this ordinance resolution thing that makes it more official.
Yeah, I guess it depends whether you want the city commission to really screw it up in the end, or whether you want to
That's what I'm asking.
Well, I know it had deliberately been kept separate
Well,
for that, but I mean it's up for discussion. I don't see a problem in keeping it the way that it has operated in the past, but
okay.
I don't know. Michelle's here to ask any questions about how the finance stuff would work, and she has the list of the history. If you have any questions really about what we're doing as a council, I can talk about that. There's several people in the audience too that have been part of those meetings that may want to comment on that as well, and I don't know where we go from here, but it's
be
that's
more
the
than
discussion.
willing. We could have questions now, or we could, if actually other people want to come up and comment, I think that'd probably be appropriate. I do. I said something. I don't want anybody to be saying I was disparaging in any way when the word slowly was mentioned with respect to Thelma. That her business is called Slow Poke Tours. So anyway, we seem to have both professional and amateur tourism geeks out there. Does anybody want to come forward?
Tourism geeks? Is that what you said?
So if they want to come forward, anyone want to come forward and speak, it's not that formal, but go ahead and introduce yourself by name anyway. And
You don't have to mention the company we already got.
You already got the company? Well, that's no fun.
You do it better than anybody else.
You should probably do it again, just in case.
Yes, my name is Thelma Hagen Miller. I'm with Slow Folk Tours. And where are you guys are all supposed to join in with?
Well, you do it again.
Slow Folk Tours. Right. And I thank you for that. That's how, for the last 25 years, I've advertised my business. And that's the only way, other than a business card that has a turtle on it that identifies that I'm slow.
Physically.
All the way around. I'm generally a slow speaker, too. I just want to say that I think this is an exciting night, and I encourage you not to go with bylaws and all those structural types of things. And I'm speaking from experience, because 25 years ago, I joined the Chamber of Commerce here in Oregon City because they didn't have anybody doing tourism or any program in tourism at all, and I saw all the potential that was here, and I asked the director after I joined as my business, which I'll let you guys all repeat, but if we couldn't start a tourism team here in Oregon City. And she said, yes, we could. Go ahead, Thelma. So Thelma set out individually to talk to people that had some reason for being part of a tourism team and promoting Oregon City outside of Oregon City as well as within Oregon City, which meant anybody could belong. But now I'm dealing with a chamber board and all of this stuff, and I know that. And I went back to that same director, and I said, I have people who want to be part of the tourism team who do not want to join the chamber. They don't live here, they don't work here, they don't operate a business here, but they want to be a volunteer with this group and help us promote Oregon City both from within and without. And we got an agreement from the board of the chamber that we would do that. These people did not have to be chamber members. We grew to be the largest committee in the chamber eventually, and we were the dominating people out there promoting, and these people came out of the woodwork, and because there was no structure. And I think that that is a model that we should recreate. And we didn't have any money. We didn't need any money. When we needed money, we went out and found it. We did a brochure. Took us a year, I think, to put all that together with a large committee. But we went to OCCIT with the mock-up and everything, and they saw the value in doing that. And so we ended up with a brochure and just went forth from there.
I have a question,
Mr.
Thelma,
Nocita.
both for Thelma and for Rocky. I remember you talking about this, Thelma, at the Pioneer Center meetings, and it was very interesting to me because you had made a very convincing argument that when you just have an open system where people come because they're interested and passionate, a lot more work gets done because people are jazzed and they have a specific contribution that they want to bring to the table. And I'm very attracted to that, and I would like to see something like this work off of that model. Rocky, your proposal talks about this temporary committee, and there are specific organizations and even specific names mentioned on this. How does this jive with Thelma's idea? Are you, if we went with a completely open system like Thelma has proposed, does it kind of obviate the need for this temporary committee in your mind, or how does what you're talking about here square with what Thelma's talking about?
Well, we've had that discussion quite a lot. I think the reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone that was at that meeting, but to me, at least the structure was that there were certain elements that couldn't be forgot. That that there was that the specific organizations or groups that are already labeled there have either already been part of this long process, and some of the names that are listed there have been people that have been along this whole process to create it to begin with. I think most everyone is pretty open to adding other viewpoints to that. That's why at the end we had this list of lodging, and we started talking about the recreation. We
Meeting
started talking
planning,
about
all kinds of things.
We added kind of a line there. We were like, what about people that do tours?
Yeah.
You know, that bring tour groups in. We've never really acknowledged that. Walking tours and bus tours and. You know, we even have seaplane. I mean, we have all these things. We have kayaking
Meetings,
tours. We have all these
of
things.
those.
So I don't think that list is solidified and is solid. I think that it's kind of open to people that fill certain slots. I don't want to see us really get in a position where, you know, there's 5 people from one of the organizations all as a you know, there needs to be one representative from each of those organizations or each of those kind of departments, I guess, if you'd say. But other than that, I think I don't know how we as a group would do it, other than, you know, the meetings are always open to anyone that attends. So if someone came and says, well, I really feel like I want to be a part of this committee, and I guess the group as a whole that's been meeting could say, well, you know, what niche do you fill in this group? Because the truth is we want other people to also, you know, maybe someone else has an idea in the city of where some of that $20,000 should go. Well, they definitely can come and basically say to this group, you know, I really think we should be working on this, and it would be listened to. And so that's the direction that I want to go. I think that's the direction that everyone on the group wants to go.
Would, down at the last bulleted item says members at large, would, in your mind, would that encompass those people like Thelma was talking about who just have a really passionate interest and could come and participate?
I think so. And I don't even think that would be strict. I don't think that would in itself be strict to the city itself, because you have, for instance, someone that operates a tour business that is not from Oregon City that brings people into Oregon City. So I don't think you can just say this is only Oregon City people. We've kind of had, you know, heated discussions about, is this an Oregon City Tourism Council, which means it's only for Oregon City, or is it for Oregon City area? I think in name it has to say it's Oregon City so that we clear that in. But in terms of people that participate, there's obviously people that don't live or work in Oregon City that are directly tied to Oregon City's tourism that should be a part of this discussion.
Called value, people who see value to helping promote what we've got to offer here and how we do it and how they can help us do it. That's what it is. It's value.
Does that mean the money usually is or always spent in Oregon City?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless Portland asks us
And
for some help someday.
if I can, I'm trying to remember in the past. We got into discussions about, well, you know, majority rules on these kind of things where the money goes. But I don't remember, and Alex, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't remember us ever doing a TAP plan where that wasn't unanimous. I mean, we worked on it until we all agreed that's where the money was going, and that's where it went. And that's the way we operated. So it was, and I think that we're all sincere in doing that. I think that we all have to agree, okay, if this is a project we can't all agree on, then we're not going to do it. We'll spend the $20,000 on something until we find what we all agree on. And I think that's really important for us to start seeing Oregon City come back and bringing these tourism and heritage organizations together to work together. I think it's crucial that we do that.
I agree. Just a couple of words. Dan
Go ahead.
Fowler, Oregon City. I want to publicly thank Rocky for his leadership in this area. He's been a member of our site support committee. It's been just really interesting and yet really gratifying to see how the group has come together. And to me, some of the best things come out of a natural progression. And this has been, I think, for all of us, a real natural progression that we were all on these various committees, and it just kept moving, and we were together, and we, as you described so well, the whole progress of the TDC and bringing the others in, and it was like, here we are. And it was a very natural thing. So I think it's the right thing when it happens that way. I agree with what Thelma said in terms of over-organizing. I think we want to remain focused on the work. We want to be focused on what is needed and build that by consensus, have 100% commitment together to do those things. And I think really, I think your question is really good, Commissioner Nocita, on how that squares up. And I think there are certain slots that we wanted to make sure were designated, but so we didn't miss the main body of tourism, but yet still remaining open for those that really wanted to be active and engaged. And I think we've tried to develop that structure to do that. So with the desire that whatever the outcome of that group's decision, it's built by consensus, and it is a unanimous decision in the end to support those projects in that manner, whatever those projects might be. So, thank you, Rocky, and really the committee for coming together. I think it's a good re-beginning, if you say, if you call it. So,
Have other members of the audience who wish to speak?
okay, thank you.
I see two people getting up.
Okay. Alice Norris, proud to be from Oregon City. First time back.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you. I was looking at, I helped to put together the Oregon City Tourism Committee because we believed back in 2003 that we needed an organizing body, besides there was money available. And so it was very, very important that we got our arms around, I think, the things that were successful and not. And I just wanted to read to you from the first tourism action plan that the TDC gave us a consultant to help us do, and I think there were nearly 75 people that at some of those meetings where we drafted what was the essence of where we wanted to go. But one of the threats at that time were decrease in tourism funding, Amtrak station not built, inertia and maintenance of status quo, no common vision or direction, and more competitive product. Some of those things are still true today, but I think what you're
You can
doing...
add a couple more, actually.
Yeah, right. Well, I didn't read.
We might want to do
I didn't
that.
read the weaknesses.
Yeah.
That's all.
You may
But-
want to do that.
But we still have some great strengths, and I think some of the strengths are that in the diversity that you've described, putting together. And I think you may have missed arts and culture in your list, but but that's what we tried to do too. And we deliberately did not want it to be an arm of government, because we wanted it to be something that was really accessible to the diversity of people that are interested in restaurants too. Don't forget the
That's on the list. That is
Is that on the list? Okay,
Yeah.
I just didn't hear you say that. But over the years, I think that Rock is exactly right. One of the weaknesses that Oregon City has had was in our curb appeal and in our competitive ability to complete projects. And so what we did was bring the Tourism Action Plan to the Council for adoption each year. So it was each update, we had to do an annual update, and then it was adopted. And the Tourism Action Plan has to be consistent with the projects that will be in your CPP, the Community Partnership Request. So those definitely have to be meshed. And the TDC will be looking for, a sincerity in how you're promoting tourism. So that's what you need to promote. What will it really do? And when I would go before the TDC, as you know, we're the only city in Clackamas County where the city is the tourism director. Tourism is always done through the Chamber of Commerce and all the other cities. So we're an unusual animal. And that, however, made us extremely competitive. When each chamber executive would sit up and be grilled, and they would cut funding and say, you can't do that till you change that because you are obviously just feathering your own nest and trying to pay for your administration. We, of course, could say, well, we have an elevator that needs some enhancements. We have a promenade that needs some enhancements. And I thought that was really a wonderful, wonderful fit. And you'll see, I appreciate that Michelle put together the list of where the projects went, because you can see the threads of the things that were important to this community. So I just applaud the fact that you've gotten this group of people back together. And so, the heart and soul hasn't really been drained out of Oregon City tourism. It's going to be put back together differently, and hopefully it'll come together stronger. And I'm eager to help you however I can.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Madam Mayor a question?
If you may.
What do you think about, when you mentioned sort of separating it from an arm of government so it has this sort of grassroots feeling to it, what do you think of Ms. Hagen-Miller's idea of calling it a tourism team?
That's fine. I don't think the name matters.
Yeah. I just think that's a...
I loved it when
love
I
that
was part of.
suggestion.
I was part of that when Thelma.
That makes us sound different,
Well,
too.
I hope the implication is that our commission isn't a team.
Well, this says council. It doesn't say commission. Council sounds like government. The team sounds like community.
I think.
I don't know.
Are
I
we
just-
going to change commission to council then?
Oh, change it to team. Team Oregon City.
Well, tourism team, the two T's kind of has a nice ring to it.
I like it. I like it.
I love that idea.
I'm William Gifford. I also live in Oregon City, and I have attended a number of these meetings as well when I can. And there's a couple of, but I hadn't seen this document. So first of all, I want to salute everybody that worked together on this. I had sort of, in my own mind, categorized some of the things that make up tourism, and I think I made a brief presentation at this at the end of the retreat, the City Council retreat, the City Commission retreat. And I had seen those things as the areas of historic attractions, recreational, which includes sports, artistic, which is the mayor, or former mayor has mentioned that was not really articulated in here, but I think that if we had more of a focus on artistic galleries, art galleries and things like that, that could also be an attraction. Mm-hmm. And one that isn't really mentioned, I did find when I saw this document, retail is an attraction, and that retail is something that draws people, especially if we had some boutique shops that were unique in the region, that I think that would certainly enhance that as well. But the piece that I don't see articulated in this document, and I really haven't heard it articulated anyway, and I'd like to take a quick stab at it, is I haven't heard a purpose. I haven't heard why we are doing this. And we all may just think that this is self-evident, but I think it's good to have a definition of what we think is a purpose for why we're doing this. And I would suggest that the reason that we're doing this is to generate funds. Sorry, I'm a businessman. To generate funds that in turn will enable us to sustain and protect our assets, particularly our historic assets, for future generations, not just for Oregon City, but for the nation. We have some phenomenal resources here that we need to protect, and we need to have a robust economy in order to be able to do that. But I don't hear that articulation of a purpose in any of the documentation that I've seen.
Right now, the only purpose is to create that document for the TAP plan, and that's the timeline that we have. I think that since this group is just now coming together anew, I think that that's definitely the next question.
Great.
I mean, what more besides just this funding kind of pass through can this tourism council or team
Real
do?
raison d'etre,
And I think
yeah.
we're very close to really talking about that. In fact, we have started talking about that in general. It's to use this as an avenue to work together completely in all the other areas that we're working, so that when we have a national heritage area, that was in the umbrella for what we're creating at the Oregon City Tourism Council or team level. And so that's the vision that I see, and I think that's coming. I think that's definitely something we want to work on.
Any more comments? Any questions, discussion?
What? Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, it's on there.
I should have known.
Can't resist.
I'm a chamber member.
Yes.
Okay, Karen Morey. With my multiple hats. I actually tried starting a walking tour business that didn't go well, so I went to work for the chamber. I love every moment of it.
I have one.
Yes. He does. And he's not a chamber member, but that's okay.
No, I'm not.
When someone calls the visitor center and asks for visitor information, they're referred to a fulfillment center and they receive basically 2 documents. When somebody calls the Chamber of Commerce and wants to come to Oregon City, I can do anything I want. But what I have are out-of-date walking tour maps of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. Rocky still needs to bring me this year's cards for the ghost tours, but I send last year's out.
Friday.
Thanks to Alice, we have a new rack card that has good information on Oregon City. The other day, I intercepted an email to Amber, sorry, David, but a request about postcards of Oregon City. I also manage the Friends of the Library bookstore. I have postcards of Oregon City. The wagons had their bonnets on when the pictures were taken. There are no postcards of Oregon City. One of the best things about focusing the TAP money into a specific committee, we have a serious need to create tourism documentation for Oregon City. We need new walking maps, we need postcards, we need a lot of things. There's been no place to go to ask for the funding to produce that. Today I asked every other city in Clackamas County, send me your information. Canby has a bike trail map. Sandy has a gorgeous map of historic things to go to that's current. Oregon City is so out of date, and, we're the mother city of the county and the place to come. So I am thrilled with Rocky's presentation, and also I don't know if I'd missed this earlier, but after our great success at the trade show, we kind of informally pulled together the advertisement in the True West magazine, which has gone out nationally. And that also came out of this group. So we've already shown that we can have successes as partners.
Well, and we have photography that's going to be done that we think we can use to possibly join with whatever marketing brochures or whatever things we do in the future, or postcards, or who knows what,
And besides postcards, the other night I was fooling around because I'm the geek.
Are you going to start a postcard business now?
No, I actually found out it's really, really easy to create a multi-platform smartphone app that gives you a walking tour, including photos, text, and voice.
There you go.
I'm playing with it.
That's cool, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Betty Mum's on the list, but it appears that she has only 20 seconds left.
Oh, no.
But, go ahead.
I'll
We'll
quit.
reset the clock.
I think this
Actually,
is
won't set a
amazing,
clock.
Rocky. You have done a great job with the group to put this together. My question is funding. How does that work? The money comes in from TDC and it goes to?
It comes in to the city. That's a Michelle question.
Okay.
Since you're here.
It does. After the presentation is done by representatives from the city, they get awarded funding. The check is sent from the county directly to me and gets deposited into the OCCIT line item area for the grant funds. And from there, it's used for whatever projects it's earmarked for.
And it works, you're kind of the fiscal manager of our other grants.
Right.
And you're acting as the fiscal manager of this. Okay.
Yes.
And that seems to work very, very
And
well.
reporting,
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, reporting, they require a mid-year report and a final report. And then in the cases this year, if there is an extension request, to make sure and get that in as well.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
So then, would you get direction from the commission that's sitting on that as to where to send the money? Is that how it will work now?
That would be my assumption, yes. And that's,
Okay.
I mean, basically, the committee, the council, the team has an outline of what projects are to be done.
Okay.
Here's the projects, here's how much for the funding for each project. And then I work with, if it's staff here locally, then work with them, or whomever else is the project manager for that those earmarked funds.
And I most likely would bring the whatever
I
our
would imagine
proposal
so,
is from the
yeah.
Oregon City Tourism Council to this commission, just so that you could be a part of that discussion too before it actually is submitted. But
So do we need to, at our next formal meeting, do anything so that you are the rep for the commission to do
Well,
that?
I don't
I've
know that we
appointed
need
him
to-
as
yeah.
liaison.
yeah.
So it
So-
works just fine.
The only thing I need is kind of the go-ahead from this commission, even that, I don't know that that needs to be at a regular meeting, but at this point, the next step is to attend the meeting that TDC is going to be having in the second week of August to kind of get the process started.
And I do have a date and time for that.
You do?
Yes, they established that. I got the email.
I hope it's when I'm in town. Is it after the 9th?
It
I
is
don't want
after
to
the
appoint a
night.
different liaison.
Okay.
It is Monday, August 15th, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, and expecting a representative from Oregon City. It will be at 150 Beaver Creek Road with agenda and room location to follow, which I can let you
Okay.
know about.
Okay, great.
Any other commissioner questions?
I think this is great.
I think so, too. We've got a request to take a break. Let's convene about 5 till.
Great.
To item C, vision discussion. All right. And we do have a report here. And since it's approved by David Frazier, I will go ahead and let him start off.
Tony's ready to go. He's been chomping at the bit all week on this one, so I'll let him take it.
Thank you, Mayor, evening commissioners. So what we brought forward tonight was we've had a lot of discussion amongst the commissioners about how do we move forward, what do we want to do. We have contingency funds available, we have an adopted budget with some programs identified in there to be completed. And so hopefully tonight we can work through the discussion of which direction do we want to go and what are our priorities going to be, and then we can work from there as to what we need to do, if there are any budget amendments or scope of works, RFPs, et cetera, et cetera. As you're well aware, we've had discussions about community-wide visioning processes, and we've had a lot of discussion about the Beaverton Community Vision Plan that was put together. We've had discussions about Blue Heron. What do we do with that site? We had discussions about the Urban Renewal District and a vision for that area. Neighborhood plans, more of an implementing plan for Falls View or Hilltop area. There's numerous areas in the city that we could do a neighborhood plan. Through the goal-setting process that we did for this year, you're well aware, we identified the South End concept plan as one of the priorities to complete, and we created our budget based on accomplishing that project for this fiscal year. We've also discussed the Beaver Creek concept plan, Luber Remand, and moving that process forward. And then that we need to adopt the concept plan, then we need to come back once that process is completed to write the zoning ordinance to implement that plan. These have all been long-term planning processes that we've worked through going back to 2002, 2004, and building on that. I did put in the memo that we did get a 3-year extension from Metro to complete the Title 11 planning for both of the South End area and the Beaver Creek concept plan out to June 30th of 2014. I included in the memo kind of a brief summary of what a community vision is. It's a visioning process. It looks at they tend to be larger than just land use. They look at social issues. They can look at communication, neighborhood involvement, educational opportunities, partnerships that can be formed. And the Beaverton example is, as I stated, it was an excellent example of community involvement and community outreach and putting together a true grassroots community vision. That process, and we realize Beaverton's substantially larger than we are in terms of, but it's the example we've been using, and I think it's a great example. It'd be a great model to follow. But there is significant time that it takes to do that, as well as there is staff involvement that's going to be required to accomplish something based on that model that we need to address. It's also important to note that when we do these community visions, they're not binding from a regulatory standpoint. They're a vision document that serves as the base, and then you build from there, whether that be amending your concept plan to implement that vision, or amending your zoning ordinances to implement your concept plan. So it's really the beginning step, and it's what we did and built on with the community visioning that we did in Oregon City. And then we rolled from that vision into the concept plan adoption process. I finished that process in 2004, and then we've had 3 code updates since then to update our code to implement the goals and policies that are in our comprehensive plan. And that can continue. When you look at our comprehensive plan, I tried to lay out some of the larger goals that were put in there, and what you find is that they're very broad. You can fit many projects in underneath those goals, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in there. We've identified neighborhood plans as a goal in the comprehensive plan. We've identified South End Road. We've identified Beaver Creek. So we still have projects that we haven't finished yet. And that's why we put together the work plan that we did in our budget, that I did, and prepared to you. That was the document we were using to begin that process and move it forward. When I made my recommendation that you had before you tonight, it was based on the goals and priorities that we had adopted, the budget that we had adopted, the staffing levels that we have available to us currently, and the comprehensive plan. Those are what we use to guide us in coming up with what our work plan is going to be, looking out over the next 2 years. And so what I was recommending was that we get the South End concept plan done. We have to get that done at some point. We have construction excise tax money available to us. It's in the budget. We're including approximately $65,000 of that construction excise tax in my budget to help pay for our existing staff. We'll be working on that project over the next year to get that completed. We did not get the Tunnel to 10th Transportation Growth Management Grant that we requested from ODOT, from the Oregon Department of Transportation. That did clear up some staff availability to do another project, whether that be Blue Heron Visioning or a neighborhood plan, which would include extensive public involvement in that process to come up with whatever plan that would be created for whichever area we decide to do. If we do decide to take a different tact and focus on a citywide community visioning process, I would recommend that we stop the long-range planning projects that we're working on, because I really believe it would be difficult with the amount of public engagement we're hoping for to do a grassroots community visioning process to then also have a concurrent running concept plan process, which for those who've been involved with that before, there is quite a bit of community involvement in that. There's quite a bit of staff time involved in that. So that's why I would recommend trying to get some of these other projects done first. I still believe our comprehensive plan serves as a good document for guiding us. And as I stated earlier, there are projects that aren't completed in there, and I think that there are great projects that we should try and complete. And then we can have the discussions about a community visioning process that rolls into a review and update of the comprehensive plan, and then whatever that next process may be that comes out of it. We identify if we need to rewrite certain sections of the code. But you're looking at a multi-year commitment to get through those steps. And I'm just a little concerned that if we take that jump right now, we're going to be here in 2 or 3 years going back to Metro and saying, can we please have another extension? And that is something we could certainly do, but at that point you're out to, having properties that have been in the UGB for over 12 years and we haven't finished concept plans on. So that's kind of the brief update of where we're at, what our options are. That I see are reasonable based on the budget that we have and the staff that we have available. And be happy to answer any questions and assist any way I can in helping get to some consensus.
Commissioner Nocita. Oh, did you have anything to add, David? Okay. Commissioner Nocita?
Okay. I've done a lot of looking into Beaverton's effort, and the focus of that effort was really their urban renewal area, if I recall. If they did it broader than that, and they did it to the whole city, then I just have extra reason to commend them for that. I understand the limitations of budget and the limitations of staff and staff resources. And I think I've mentioned in earlier meetings on this that one way I see this proceeding is in steps, not necessarily all at once, but from area to area. We've talked about the urban renewal visioning process. I think a complement to that, and especially because of contingencies of the Blue Heron closure, is doing a community visioning process for the Blue Heron site. And I don't think that should wait for South End or Beaver Creek. I think that's a contingency we need to address now.
Mm-hmm.
That project can provide the community kind of like a really neat kind of like training of how we can do this, and getting people used to how the process works. We can apply that to either a big picture citywide project, or some of the things that are in the concept plan that you've identified that there are other neighborhood projects that are called for in the comprehensive plan that we can kind of like use the same model for. And so I think I would very much like to propose that we commence immediately a community visioning process for the mill site. We're in July now, and I'm kind of uncomfortable with that we haven't dived into that Blue Heron visioning process already, given the pace with which the bankruptcy proceeding is proceeding. The bankruptcy proceeding is going. So that's and Blue Heron's not within the urban renewal district, so we couldn't use urban renewal funds on that. So if the commission's interested, that's what I would really recommend. Another point about the Blue Heron issue too. In some of these meetings that the mayor and I have been attending with staff, including staff from the county, I gotta, and I don't care that this is being broadcast, I have this level of discomfort with how aggressive the county is on recommending its own person to do the visioning and that kind of stuff. It's within our jurisdiction, and I really want to have this be an Oregon City vision, because I think if we surrender that process to the county, we're going to surrender the vision. I don't want to do that. So I think we need to proceed really quickly and get rolling on a community visioning process for the mill site, and I would even want to get the commission's head nod and consensus on having staff draft up a competitive RFP for such a community visiting process for the mill site. So that's all comments on that tonight.
I'm Tony, I'm going to ask you a question. Would you describe in rather detail what our concept plan dealt with in terms of the mill closure, the master planning activities, that would occur and when they would step in. I mean, the closure, I guess, was in February, if I recall right. And could you kind of outline the timeline between the master planning and the mill closure, based on our comprehensive plan? If you can remember it. That's
Yeah,
kind of putting you on the spot.
I'll paraphrase. I don't remember exactly, but what the comprehensive plan policy says, that if the Blue Heron site ever changes use, significantly changes use, then a master plan will be required on the site, as through the land use process. So that's pretty much what the comprehensive plan says concerning that specific property. So that protection is in place should it change from an industrial use to a mixed use or a mixed employment type of use. So that would be a
But
requirement.
if I can clarify, that wouldn't be triggered, though, simply by because arguably in September, when they have the auction, that means there's no more chance even that it's going to reopen as a mill. But my understanding is that would not trigger it. It would only be triggered when the new emerging owner, proposed a change of use.
Correct.
Right, at that point. So the master plan requirement isn't triggered just by the closure of the mill. It's triggered by an application for another
Development.
use.
Yes. Yes.
So it could sit there fallow for.
Yes. And I just I do want to be clear that when we do visioning, as I stated earlier, that it's non-binding. It's the base. It's the broad general desire. It's the goals. It's the vision for the site. At that point, if we know who the property owner is at that point, hopefully we can engage them with the vision, and at that point a decision can be made. Are we cooperating to do a master plan that's identified in our comprehensive plan to move this forward?
But it seems to me the sequence you're describing, we would want to have that visioning done as soon as possible, before all of these things take place.
Yeah, there's arguments for and against that.
Yep.
Some people believe that you shouldn't do a vision. They would argue you shouldn't do that in this case until you know who the property owner is, so they can participate and be active and involved and engaged and collaborative and so forth. And there are others who believe the sooner we do this, the better, because regardless of who the property owner is going to be, they need to know that we're going to have a say in this and we care about it and that we're interested in it. And so, my professional opinion is the sooner we do it, the better. It would be great to have a property owner participate, but just if you look at the timing here, chances are by the time we get the consultant on, it's going to be a few months to get that done.
That's the point I was going to
And
make.
who
By the time
knows,
draft
we
an
may have a
RFP
property
and
owner
send it out.
The timing may
it's gonna
work
be
out.
October.
The timing may be perfect as far as having the property owner. So I just think the sooner you can get started on that process, probably the better.
And this is another one of those, we've got some unknowns that we're trying to work within, and the property owner is a big one. We could go through this visioning process. The bankruptcy property ownership may be contingent on 8 months of due diligence. So there's just a lot of unknowns, and then in the worst case, we go through this process. We come up with a community vision we've got great consensus on and community support for, and you've got a property owner that buys it with a complete different intent. So these are the unknowns that we just don't. Either we need to go do this because we want to get out in front of this and show that this is what our vision is. We're hoping that this is yours as well, and we can work with you to implement something like this. They're on board. We know who they are. They can work with us through that visioning process.
And if we're too far in front of them, it'll be very difficult for a property owner to say, well, I didn't know that the city, for example, if a city said, I want, an amphitheater or something down there that's a requirement, and the new owner has a totally different thing in mind, it'd be kind of nice for them to know, well, that's a hurdle I'm going to have to deal with. Do I want to buy the property and face that, or is that something I can live with? Do I like that? It's going to make it more attractive to people that happen to agree with your vision and less attractive to people that don't. Right. And just thinking about recent developments at Rossman, I'm good with that. The more we can get our vision expressed in a consensus, the better it'll be, I think.
Right. But we would, as a product of this, we wouldn't. I'm sorry. As a product of this, we wouldn't have any code amendments,
No, and
zone
that's-
changes.
And we know we can't
Okay.
do that while the bankruptcy stays in effect.
Yeah,
But
right.
we also know that the stay doesn't prevent us from doing visioning.
Right.
So,
But this vision could roll immediately into
Right.
that next step.
And of course, if you do your vision and the master plan's done and we don't have enough code language to require certain things, then we may be in a position to negotiate some of that. So you may not get all the vision you want, but you might get part of it or most of it. And you guys know all that. I
He
think
writes
you know
code
this.
really quickly.
Yeah, but there are notice requirements. There are notice requirements.
say, Kathy?
He writes code real quick.
We have other.
That cottage housing.
We have other tools. I mean, we could have a stay. I mean, some cities put a moratorium on certain things. So, I mean, there's different legal maneuverings we can do. If we get faced with that situation, I hope we will not be faced with that situation. I think the best thing for us to do is try to work out a collaborative agreement with who the property owner is going to be. And as soon as we can decide what it is, because right now, the trustee called me tomorrow and said, what do you want to see on that site? I think I know public access. I think I know likely a promenade somewhere along the waterfront. And that's about it right now as far as a vision. I mean, we have certain values that we want to protect.
I think the
Historic properties, yeah.
But the Falls is more than simply public access. It's a place to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Commissioner Mumm.
Thank you. I think you both have argued my point very nicely. It's not our property. We're going to vision it. We're going to pay to have it done. Is that correct? And I guess what's that process? What does that look like to me, David? If you could explain that to me.
Well, I might let Tony take a shot at that because, essentially what we're talking about is getting different stakeholders throughout the community, neighborhood associations. There would be a law enforcement component, transportation, much like a miniature comprehensive plan is what I would imagine. So that there'd be people from the business community. It could even be people who've put in a bid with the trustee who aren't sure they're going to be the owner, but they might want to participate. The county, school district. There'd be representatives basically from the fire district, any taxing authority, certainly neighborhood association members, people that live in the area.
So we pay a consultant and they do this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And we do this at the same time that we're doing the South End concept plan?
Correct.
And it's not going to confuse our citizens?
I don't think so.
Well, you have the geographic.
I'm just
just
like
saying.
going back a few. Nancy, do you remember any of those kinds of times? Yes.
You know what? Honestly,
So I just
had
want to be clear to the
Tony and I had
citizens.
some very candid conversations because I just like to be upfront about what we can do and can't do. And I think it was over a lunch or two. I said, "Are you sure you can do this at the same time?" And the biggest challenge, and I think
this being
can we do the visioning on Blue Heron and can we do Beaver Creek concept in the same year?
Or
In the
South
same-
End. South
Okay,
End. South
South
End.
End. I'm sorry. And
See, even he's got it.
yeah,
I went through a visioning. I went through this with the team up. Is that what we're calling?
Team Up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's our citizens, I'm sorry, they're very intelligent, but they do kind of get confused when you mix a bunch of stuff together.
Well, I think you may be a better judge of that, and you're in this particular community than me. You've got a lot more time here. But I would say you have a couple things going for you. Number one, Blue Heron is so unique.
Mm-hmm.
The Falls is so unique and so geographically sort of its own thing. That it's going to be harder probably to confuse that than it would be maybe some of the other things that you've identified. So I think that's one of the big factors that you have to consider.
And then whoever buys it doesn't have to doesn't have to go with the visioning plan, right?
It's not by itself a binding document. It's a vision. It's a guideline. What binds the future property owner are subsequent actions that you take to pass in your zoning law and your code that require things that are identified in the vision to be materialized over time. So it leads to that. It's the foundation for code changes that actually cause things to be created on the ground.
Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
I was just going to say on the issue that you just brought up, Bethany, I could see people definitely separating South End and the mill site. The problem, though, where the confusion could very easily happen with the mill site and envisioning is at the same time you have the Willamette Falls Heritage Area thing going on. A lot of people might get that confused.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, I
it
could
would
see
very
that
much
happening.
be, oh, now they're visioning for this piece of property.
Yeah, I could see that.
How's that connected with the National Heritage Area Coalition? Is that the same thing? Are they trying to take over that area? That could be confusing.
Yeah.
So we got to be careful of that.
Commissioner Nocito. Now I'm going to push a button. I'm making sure I know.
I'm going to respond to Rocky because I think he makes a good point. But here's what I foresee. Here's I can actually see a benefit to that.
Yeah.
And here's why I say that. We on the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, we're in the process of a lot of research, historical research into a bunch of themes. I'm on a committee called Themes and Inventory. And I can really, really see where the information and knowledge that we gain over the next couple of months can be worked into the visioning process for the Blue Heron Mill. And I can only see that as beneficial. I'm sure a lot of the people who are associated with the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition would also be very interested in participating in the visioning process for Blue Heron. And I think that could be a nice compliment.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I actually stands out to me even more than the possibility of confusing citizens. That I think, and this one I've actually experienced this in another city. Cities only have there is a finite amount of energy, volunteer energy that all of you have to go to meetings. That all of our regular attendees here that are a big part of creating things. I mean, the audience is thin.
All those people right there.
Those six.
Our fans?
But keep in mind these committees, as you know, because many of you have been on them. You know, I'm going to be sitting there next to the school superintendent, who's going to be sitting next to the president of the college, and we're probably going to be on the intergovernmental cooperation subcommittee of one of these committees. Well, there's only so many mornings you're going to get those folks to get there because they have a lot of other responsibilities. So the bigger danger to me seems that sort of overburdening the community energy to do this. And then if that happens and you kind of get mixed half attendance at each one, then you've sort of watered down the community energy. So the quality of the end result may not be quite as compelling as it would be if you were doing them separately.
Yes.
And that's a reality.
And I think one of the discussions we've also had is, unfortunately when I look at this, I'm a couple steps ahead of what do we do next after this.
After that.
And some of the just the concerns, and I've brought this up before. We've got transportation planning rule. We come up with this vision, and we need $40 million in transportation improvements. There's just some unknowns. These are just some more unknowns that we have out there. What does the Phase 2 environmental say on the site? What's amazing about that site, for example, the rail line that goes down the middle of it is actually on a 2-story wooden bridge.
Right.
Which means that how much of that site's actually on decking.
Right.
How much of that decking can we salvage and reuse? What happens if we
the one that goes through the middle of the mill? So it's underneath that platform. There's actually like a trestle holding up that
That's my
rail
understanding.
line.
Yes. So, but you can see that. Okay, let's say we have to take that out because it's structurally not sound to build what we want to build on top of it. What does that do with DSL and Army Corps? So that's one of the potentials we need to consider when we're doing this visioning process, because we don't know all the limitations or possibilities on the site yet.
And you're right. What do we do with the end result? Does it sit on a shelf and collect dust?
Well, we hope we use it as a tool to move forward.
One of the things you can consider is sort of it's definitely a watered down, it's not a visioning process, but one of the things you might consider is having sort of a miniature community visioning process, a meeting process. It's not a full-blown process where, even amongst ourselves and our executive session discussions, it was really clear to me some 4 or 5 guiding principles, besides public access and historic protections and things like that. you could have a process that's scaled down considerably, where you simply identify values, virtues, things on the site that are important to the community, and then you adopt that as by resolution as an official statement. And we can take that statement, and if I end up in the governor's office asking them for money to help something happen here, and they say, well, what's your community statement about that?
You'll have it.
You know, I can verbalize something, but I'd rather say,
Here it is.
I have a council resolution based on community input, and it's a scaled-down version. It's more or less a couple of weekend workshops or something that
Yeah.
ultimately results in a more of a scaled-down vision that leaves enough flexibility for these unknowns. Like, I mean, the thing Tony just talked about the two-story wooden trellis,
Yes.
we learned that 3 weeks ago. You know, I don't know what else we're going to learn on the site.
There are a lot of stuff that we.
So
yes,
if you
right.
did that, and then you could always refine the vision after, that gives us the idea of saying to potential purchasers, these are the qualities these are the things that the community cares about on the site.
No, I could get
It's-
behind that more so than a huge visioning process.
It's a little more expeditious as far as getting that information out. It's not as comprehensive, but would probably still allow us to write some code.
And it gives
And
us
then
and it gives us
eventually
something.
do a large visioning process.
And it gives either one of those documents gives us something to get our foot in the door
Yeah.
and say we've started to look at this.
Right.
These are some of the core principles, some of the core visions, some of the core products we want to see here, without being so restrictive with the unknowns that we just don't have the answers to.
That's
And
a
I
good
think
idea.
I actually am brainstorming right here, but I'm thinking of a phase one visioning where you identify these principles, these core values I just talked about.
Yeah.
And then with the intent or the idea that once a property owner emerges, we're going to do the phase two
Which
vision,
I think is great.
which, depending on the nature of the property owner, that might really be a great thing.
Yeah.
Well, my
That's a
name's
good idea.
Green now, and I'm going to speak. A couple of things. Those things on a Sonnet trestle. I mean, that has maybe positive possibilities too. I mean, a lot of communities, based on the history of what's happened there, have been able to develop commercial aspects around those
That's
particular
right.
things. So when you hear that, you say, "Oh no," and actually the answer is, "Oh yes." I wanted to kind of disagree with the intent of the meetings that James and I attended, where we've had members not only from the county but from Metro and the state there. I think probably their interests are very much in common with ours. Public access, probably a park at the falls and so forth. And among those different entities, we may be a money player in the bankruptcy procedures. Maybe we can find a developer that's willing to partner with us in looking at the visioning process that we put forward, that becomes the number one money offer within the process. And I think that's a possibility, a
Well,
true public-private partnership.
Yeah.
And I don't see any other way it could come about but through a visioning process, actually, that comes ahead of the game, that we don't wait for the bankruptcy court to make the choice.
I think there's kind of consensus to do that. We want to do something proactive.
Yes.
I think
Whether it's a year-long
Yeah.
visioning process,
Yeah.
which is more typical what they would take,
Right.
or it's this scaled-back
Yeah.
version that's a little more broadly defined.
Mhm.
That's going to be something you have to decide, I suppose. But
Okay. Kathy, Rob. Yes or no?
Well, I've got two issues. One is I think it's a good time to build, when you're talking about community energy, I think it's a really good time to build on the energy that's kind of coming out of Onward Oregon and Shaw's efforts and things. I think that's a really good meld. I also think it would be a good time to bring in the original citizens, who I just went back over the table of contents for the original visioning and didn't see that brought in there. And I think that that's something that really needs to happen at this site as a healing point for Oregon City. That we have some of the original natives, not the original natives, they're hard to find, but
I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be down there.
They could be.
I should say the Confederated Tribes were a member of this discussion.
Yes, they are certainly
And
they
they
are
were
certainly at the
fantastic
table.
contributors to the
So
discussion.
they are a member of the discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're not on this original report I saw here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I think it's a really good time to bring them into the discussion, too, as part of the visioning process.
Very first meeting, Kathy, that we had, I think in our loosely constructed agenda, one of the things we had on there was who should be at the table. And that was one of the, PGE wasn't there and the tribes weren't there. So then the second meeting we had, I think we got everybody that time that we needed.
Thank you.
They were great. They made great contributions, very good comments. They even suggested that they may have money to help with the planning. And
And they said they wouldn't be looking at for a casino, too.
I didn't hear that.
I know I heard that.
I heard that.
Did you hear that?
They said that.
But there was some talk about endangered species in the lamprey. And
He was representing the tribes in that case.
Yeah.
Yes, James.
Yeah, I want to follow up on this question of a scaled-down version or a full version. And I think I mentioned this in my commissioner communication at the last meeting about your and my trip out to Beaver Creek. And Colleen Heinz? Connie Heinz. And how I had mentioned that she was a wonderful font of knowledge about the economy out there and what role Oregon City could play economically in servicing the farming industry out there. And I want to link that to Tony's comments about unknowns, about whether we should do something large scale or small scale, because there are unknowns. To me, the way I've read about how these visioning processes take place, it turns every individual into a font, of specific knowledge to contribute to the big picture. And I think, to me, that would kind of be an argument for doing the full-scale visioning up front, because it would be a broader process, and it would actually help us discover through the participants some of the unknowns that you're talking about, and address them and grapple with them early on in the process. So that's as far as whether to do something on a small scale or on a large scale. I think it's still be an advocate for doing the full scale.
I guess my comment is that it wasn't on our goals to do this full-scale piece. I think this is a perfect introduction to what I would consider the next 2 years, and we're talking about perhaps doing a budget on a 2-year basis as opposed to a 1-year basis, and actually make the visioning for the comprehensive plan part of that biennial budgeting process. I think you're right in terms of the visioning, but especially when we're talking about...
No, I'm talking about just the large visiting process for Blue Heron.
Right.
The comment I was just making, applying only to Blue
Oh,
Heron.
I see. You were giving an example.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I
because
misunderstood.
on the Blue Heron
Okay.
project, there was a discussion of whether to do something full scale or something more introductory.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm saying, based on
Yeah.
what I know of visioning processes, I think we should do the full visioning process for Blue Heron rather
Yes.
than an introductory process.
Yes, I agree.
C3.
I would not
comfortable
agree
with
with that. I like the smaller version.
let me ask you this. Are you comfortable, I know Tony's comfortable doing those concurrently. Do you think there's enough community resources, enough volunteer hours out there for people to be involved in both of them at the same time?
Yes.
Both of what?
Both
South
of
End.
Maybe not for South End, but sure as heck for the mill.
I think we got plenty of interest in the mill. I think we'll have plenty.
I mean, you won't have a problem. I mean,
That'll be the
that's-
signature thing going on in Oregon City because it
Absolutely.
defines the town.
Absolutely.
And when we were talking, or when I was talking about taking the big leap, I see this, I see this
That's
as
it?
as the beginning of the leap.
It's great.
It,
I'm really excited about it.
if I might, I just wanted to comment in terms of taking the big leap. I guess what we don't want to do is create a vision that you won't find any entities wanting to buy into that have money. And so
That would be part of the economic.
yeah. So what I don't what I don't want to do is come up into micromanaging the vision.
Right.
I think it's got to be broader than that, but I think it's got to be more than an introductory process, and I think that's what you're indicating. I mean, we have to start defining these things, and if they're good enough, maybe.
Yeah, the biggest risk you run is being too specific.
Yeah. Yes.
About your vision.
Right.
And if you look at the vision statement we have here from Beaverton, I'm just going to I'm going to critique these guys a little bit. I think this vision statement's too long. It's should be a paragraph. I mean, it's a great vision statement, but there's more. Sometimes when it comes to a statement of the vision, less is more. And the more can come in the form of all these other provisions that come underneath the statement itself. So there'll be a list of goals and values and virtues and things like this public access and the Native American component, these other pieces, history, that will be part of this vision. But that's why we're going to try to get the best consultant we can. There's a lot of interest, I think. There will be a lot of interest from some of the best consultants in the nation that want to work on this, and I'm hoping that we will be successful.
So
in
how do you foresee the RFP process being formulated, the timeline? If we were to give you guys the head nods to approve it, so go ahead as of tonight.
Do I do a small one? Do I do the medium one? Are we doing a big one? How much money do I get?
I guess I'd just appreciate a little bit of time to go back and, I've got quite a bit of ideas, but because of the uncertainty that we've had on how we move forward, we've been very high level in doing the research on these projects. We're going to have to start and write an RFP, and if we can get assistance, we're going to start calling around, see who's got money, who wants to assist.
I've identified some some individuals and some organizations. I mean, we do have a little bit of money that you budgeted for Blue Heron.
Yep.
I think we had $100,000 to start the year, but we probably owe some of that to our bankruptcy attorney. So once all those bills are in, I'm suspect that we have at least $60,000 of that left, but we're going to need more than that to do this.
I'm going to suggest that we might request from the Urban Renewal Agency a contribution, even though the proportion of the area that is within the agency is small. It really serves as a gateway to the project. At least from the Main Street side.
There are at least two or three other governments that we can.
The Promenade side.
Yeah, the Promenade and the Main Street
Which is
side.
a
So
piece.
We'd be happy to put that on the next
Yeah.
Urban Renewal Commission agenda to make an allocation. You have lots of contingency funds for these kinds of things.
So, and I'm looking at it as a request from the Urban Renewal Agency to make a kick-in. I think the Urban
Sounds
Renewal
appropriate.
Agency can be involved in the same way that any other citizenry is involved, but it's actually essentially a grant request, so that for part of the visioning process.
On the agenda. But before we do, we probably ought to have a little bit better idea how much it's going
I
to
understand
cost.
that.
And once we do, we'll.
So 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months? Not 3 years.
Not 3 years, not 3 months.
Okay, good.
I guess I think I need to go back. We need to identify some funding sources. We need to kind of work through this scope, going with this somewhat larger. We're not doing a small one, so it's going to be something bigger than that.
Right.
And we'll start putting that together, and we'll give you an update via email, and then bring it back with some more concrete numbers and timelines.
And we probably won't be having those meetings here because it's going to be a bigger group.
Oh no! Yeah, I would.
We'll be at the Pioneer Center or somewhere else.
Or somewhere else.
Commissioner Roth, I got different people green here. You're green. I think maybe.
I'm not on there.
You're done.
Take me off here.
And everybody is being blanked out as I speak. I think we got comments from the audience. You still got to say your name.
My name?
Yes.
My name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. And I just, I'm a little puzzled by a couple of things, not the least of which is what precipitated our almost sudden admiration of Beaverton. No disparages against Beaverton, but their population is 90,000 people. And for all of their efforts and all the money that they spent on their process, they got maybe 5,000 people to participate, less than 5% of their population, which is really a big number in percentage-wise. But if you try to translate that to Oregon City, I'm not saying that this is not as participatory as possible. Our citizenry is perhaps as participatory as any's, but sometimes it's hard to get, as the city manager has talked about how thin you spread your volunteers is a tricky situation. If we got 5% of our population, that's maybe 1,500 people. Don't snort. 1,500 people. That's a lot in Oregon City, and for the amount of.
Let's make every student at the high school participate.
There you go. Make them mandatory. If they want to graduate, they have to participate. Actually,
extra credit.
That's another subject for another time. But
graduation
looking
requirement.
over their product here, this community vision that they came up with, it's very nice. But to me, it's almost too nice in the fact that I don't see a whole lot that they have done that we haven't done. I think Oregon City has done an enormous amount, and I think it's very participatory government. And I don't know that we're that far off the track that we need to scrap everything and start all over again.
I think what we're talking about at this point.
If you're just talking specifically about Blue Heron, yeah, sure, we need to have citizen involvement.
Let me put this in the context. We're really expected to relook at our comp plan within a 10-year period.
Of course.
And we're going to be approaching that, and I think this is a good lead into that activity.
It's fine.
And it's from that standpoint that I think that we can proceed.
I don't know that we need to model ourselves with rose-colored glasses against trying to
I don't want to model anything after anything in Washington County. I mean, we're Clackamas County.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could say something about the level of participation that William's talking about. There's participation. I mean, if Beaverton's advertising 1,500 or 1,000, there's participation, which is, I'm up at, or whatever, 7 a.m. or whatever it is, and I'm there, and I'm actively engaging my brain for 3 hours working on this once a week for 6 months. That's one kind of participation. And then I filled out the post-it and stuck it on the board at the open house, and that's another kind of participation, and if that post-it goes in the box, many of our staff are going to count that. So I'm going to set a reality check here. If you get 300 Oregon City residents to actively participate and show up to one or more of those 3-hour meetings, you're hitting it over the fence. And I hope we can do better than that. I hope we get 500 or 1,000. But if you get 200 or 300 people to show up on a consistent basis to work on this, you've really got something to brag about. And I'm not above, and frankly, I'll tell you how we did this in Wisconsin when we won this big national award. Wisconsin being what it is, we bribed them with food and beverages, and we set it at a time when we thought a lot of people could be there, and we went overboard on the expenses as far as they're volunteering their time. At least you can do is give them something besides a stale cookie.
Absolutely. And
we wanted them to show up and keep showing up. And it was remarkable because the first turnout we had was a little bit lackluster, and I said, well, the food was lousy. Let's spread the word how good the food is, and pretty soon, you know what it cost us when you total up the number of volunteer hours and the meals we had them catered in. They were nicer than just about any restaurant in town as far as the quality of the food. And so maybe it was $15 a head. Well, we were getting 3 hours of free labor from these people for months.
You do not want to advertise anything that the city does as being better quality than the restaurants in Oregon City.
Well, we'll probably use the local vendors. We won't have to because we got great restaurants.
I think, and not to say that we're just going to carbon copy a process, but the fundamentals, the base that went into that, to how they did the plan, is very admirable. There was no agenda from the commission or the city. There were no preconceived results.
Right.
That's what made it unique and a good example.
You're talking about Beaverton's
Yes.
process.
And
I
it
agree
really
with
would
that.
be applicable to any process that, I mean, this is something that really should be on the Oregon City resume, and all of your resumes, and all the resumes of the staff, and anybody else who participates when we're done, that we can really boast about, a coming together
And-
around a site like this. And, you know, frankly, I think the eyes of Oregon are going to be on us on this one. This isn't going to be, you know, a little town flying under the radar, did something, and it made a headline once. I mean, this site is so unique. We owe a stewardship responsibility to the people of Oregon, the people of the United States, to do this the right way. And they're going to be watching us. So I'm going to try to make sure everything we do is way above average. So hopefully it'll work. So we'll come back in a few weeks with more information.
Hopefully sooner than that, yeah.
Would you like to say something?
I was just enjoying it. Dan Fowler, Oregon City. I agree with the city manager. Obviously this project is in Oregon City physically, but this is an Oregon project. This is bigger than us, and I think it takes that kind of an attitude to make it worthy of that. Just a couple of comments, and I love the vision thing. I've been doing it a long time. But I think one thing that would help in that process is, as much as can be, that there's also a factual analysis put together. How much land, current zoning, height restrictions, view sheds from the bluff. How does that match in with ODOT requirements? Critical factor. What has to be done based on greater density, if there is such, at the mill? What does that mean to the on-ramps, off-ramps at 205? What does it mean to 99E? And where are those trade-offs? So how much of the mill site becomes a public space, a park, a linear promenade, a park, because you really can't develop it all, because those requirements of density are so high that it pushes your transportation factors so high that you can't make the numbers work. That's the kind of analysis, and I don't know that ODOT is one to come to the table early and almost brainstorm or work with you on some of that analysis versus tell me your project, I'll tell you if it can work or not. So trying to get that
They're going to be there.
factual analysis in the mix could really be helpful to the future development. As much, quite frankly, as a vision. And I'm not against vision, but if you're trying to entice the development community to take a reality check at the mill, having some real analysis of doability is critical. I think that could really go a long way. And as much as we can get some of that, or different scenarios in that, you might have a 5-story structure occupying 50% of the land versus 3-story structure occupying 75% of the land, and just run some of those. It's square footage, it's analysis. What does that mean to transportation? Now, if we enter into a streetcar that comes into that area and goes up through Gladstone and up to the new light rail stop, up McLaughlin Boulevard, what does that mean for our densities in there, and does that make it more doable? Those are the kind of what-ifs. If we can engage a TriMet or engage ODOT in a factual or brainstorming discussion on the analysis of the site, not so, I don't think the vision is too far off. Mixed use, multi-use, residential, office, retail. I mean, there's some of that, but then talking about density, how much, how high, sure. Those, is it a place for industry, not industry, those kind of things. I mean, there's some specifics that we could talk about, but factual analysis could really go a long way with vision. The comment on county, I understand the county. I really respect the fact that it is an Oregon City project. County's kind of involved because when you talk about Blue Heron, part of it is in West Lynn. Part of it's in Oregon City. So anybody that kind of buys that site is going to be working with two jurisdiction. Is that this two cities role, county role? You know, I mean, that's you kind of understand why it's a little bit beyond us, not so far that it takes it away from us.
We're going to do the zoning.
You bet. Zoning's here, and I totally understand that. So, but just a comment. Thing about visioning we have to be careful of, the first time the people saw the picture of the Riverage projects in the newspaper, they thought it was a done deal. They thought it was going to be built. They were shocked that even now people come up and go, You mean it's not going to be built? So we have to be careful that we're not supplanting in people's mind, and I think we still should do visioning, but we have to be careful in that process, I think, that we say this is but one idea. This is what we can conceptually hope that the private sector does, so that people don't think, well, that's it. So the comment about being too
Beaverton's
specific versus guiding principles. Yeah.
Not very specific.
That's right. Guiding principles are great, not too specific. Just a comment. I love the fact about the guiding principles: public access, honor of history, mass transit. Some really core guiding principles. Public access, public participation. All those things are the elevator speech. If you can send the mayor and the manager to the governor, you want the elevator speech. You want to say, this is why it's important to us, and these are our guiding principles. We need your participation. So anyway, factual analysis would really help go a long way with vision. Thank you.
I would extend it beyond that a little bit, because we're talking about this greenway along the Willamette River to the metro region. I'd like to see that thing go right up to the Narrows eventually, Willamette Narrows. And, the possibilities are tremendous.
If you talk about vision around this site, I see a couple of things. I know in years past we talked about the access piece through the tram down to the falls. I see a loop tour of public access that goes from there to the promenade, around the elevator down. I see a paved bicycle, ped, maybe even horse path from here to New Era, across the Narrows to West Lynn. I see some loop tours if we really want to get into with the vision as a community, really of national stature. It is of national stature, but we are the ones that have to raise it there and get it there. So we got to do it right. Yeah. So
I guess.
Thank you.
I think this was, and I thank Dan for bringing that up, because I think he presented it better than I did, of some of the unknowns. So it becomes that question of, how do we incorporate that into this? We're obviously going to have a limited amount of funds, and what's the best way to allocate that? Is it better to do this larger visioning process, and you come up with these great pictures, and then someone comes in and goes, "You're nuts! It's economically not feasible." So it has to be grounded in some realities, which should be a part of this as well.
And I was already intending, Dan just gave me an opportunity to talk about it, but I already have a long, short list of people that that we're going to have there. And one trick I learned back in Wisconsin was to have the ODOT Senior Regional Director, whatever the dot there, it was WISDOT, here it's ODOT, have them there. And part of that visioning process so they can help identify, I think that's going to be a problem, and then go back to their staff and try to do as much analysis as they can. They're basically part of the movement, part of the visioning. So it's not a surprise to the organization or the agency. We also want, he mentioned TriMet, we also would want DEQ, State Economic Development, the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, state parks, chamber, school district, fire district, Clackamas Community College. It's going to get a lot longer. But you may have 100 people on that steering committee, not to mention all the other participation that you hope to get. So big room, small tables, good food. I think we can get there.
And breakout committees.
Absolutely, subcommittees for everything, every component of it. It's going to be fun.
Any other comments? If not, we're going right into your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we are having later this week a staff summit on Ermatinger. I've been doing some checking on grant funding for that. You know that Portland signed on with us now, and you know what our budget is for it. I have identified a grant source that I'm only 50-50 certain that we'll be able to qualify for it, but it's a fairly large amount. Wouldn't be enough to get us all the way there, but we're going to be working on that with a lot of diligence. We have a meeting this week with Scott and a representative from the county to try to firm up that application. Let's see. Also wanted to let you know, one of the Commissioner Nocita asked me if I would report to you what process I intend to use for the appointment of a new economic development manager. And a couple of weeks ago, Jim Leffler and I completed this profile of Oregon City where we said lots of nice things about our community and I described this to Commissioner Acita as we're fishing for talent, and so we want to be honest and identify what our community is, what our community's about, what the issues and opportunities are, what the job entails, what the trouble spots are, what the experience and education requirement is, and as much as we can about our expectations. And then there's usually a section in there on compensation and other things that an applicant would care about. So we will be posting this profile right away in the next few days and do a national recruitment. As far as the process that we're going to use, we haven't refined it completely, but in general, I'm looking at, we would have an initial resume screening. From the qualified candidates from that, we may have a phone interview before we actually do on-the-ground interviews. Once we get to the on-the-ground interview stage, I'm contemplating at least 3 different panels of interviewers. One would be a panel from the business community and citizens who could be involved. Another one would be, I want my executive team members, department heads, to be one of those teams. A third panel would include what I call technical experts. These would be economic development professionals, architects, other people that we think could be helpful in addressing the technical competencies that an economic development professional should have. I'll probably ask economic development staff professionals from other cities in the region or counties in the region that I respect, whose opinion I think will be helpful. And those will be, I was on the technical interview panel for Lake Oswego when they picked their police chief, because I was in there with some city managers and a couple of sheriffs and a couple other police chiefs. And so it turned out that was the panel the candidates feared the most, because we had the most difficult questions for them. So there will be a panel like that.
A really bright light. And
No, but we did have tough questions. You can't fool these people. There's the technical experts, because frankly, as much as all of us think we're experts in economic development, very few of us really are. So we'll have that technical panel. Then I'm also going to try to organize some sort of a reception event, probably be here at City Hall, kind of a stand-up with little snacks or whatever. And I want you, as a commission and our citizens at large, to have a chance to intermingle with these people in kind of a meet and greet setting, and then offer me any feedback that you pick up on as a result of that. And so when we're done with that matrix, there will be reports from each of these panels, and there will be recommendations to me. Then we'll do background checks. Then we'll start the process of kind of winnowing down that list of finalists to the top 2 or 3, and I'll begin negotiating with them. So that's essentially the process I would use for just about any department head, but we would use different experts and different panels depending on the nature of the position. So that's what I intend to do, and so if you have any questions about it, let me know.
Sounds good. I'm going to go back to our lead thing about future agenda items. I was considering it for an urban renewal agency future agenda item, but maybe the city commission could consider it first in a study session. In 2013, there's supposed to be some kind of historic trails activity that's going to come to Oregon City. I think we need to start putting together some thoughts of, even if it's on a temporary basis, how can we effectively open the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. That letter I read during the Urban Renewal Commission study session there from this person that was so disappointed when they got here. I don't want that attitude being reflected when we may have hundreds of people coming to the end of the Oregon Trail. And I think we need to discuss what we're going to do with that site within a 2-year period to meet this group that's going to be coming in. We might want to discuss that at the City Commission first level, and maybe then at that point we might want to engage the Urban Renewal Commission as well, because the site is there and there are more monies there than other places. And so I'd like to throw that, if that's okay with the rest of the City Commission, onto a future study session.
I also have a future agenda item, now that you mention it, that I didn't remember, but I recalled as soon as Kathy mentioned the quick ordinances on cottage housing. I would like to take a look in a work session at the cottage housing ordinance, because when you sent it out and I read it, I had a few notes on it, and I'd like to go through it, and so we can get to know it well, and maybe I have some suggestions on maybe we could refine it a little bit. So if the commission's interested in that, I'd like to have a work
Could I
session
ask
on
you
that.
a question about that? I mean, where did you get your template for that, or what did you use as a template, or did you just do it, or?
We used, it's been a while. But Puget Sound area
Ross Chapin.
was one of the major templates.
Okay.
We pulled thumb editing from 4 or 5 jurisdictions.
Okay.
And then through the code update process, we worked quite a bit with the planning commission in defining and picking and choosing components that we wanted to put together for EC.
Right.
But it was almost entirely taken from other jurisdictions.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not going to say, obviously, not going to say you shouldn't do that, but I'm going to be saying to you, focus, because tonight you've got a big idea here. So if you want to look at that, or if you want us to, maybe Tony could send out a quick email and explain how it works, unless have you all had a chance to read it? Or you, Jim, there's another possibility too, if you wanted to have a meeting with me or Tony and make the recommendations or suggestions that you have. I'm just trying to say, if there's a way you could save a work session, or do you really feel like, because I don't know what your concerns are, and if you're pretty convinced we need to have a work session, then by all means we'll have one. But
No, I could do it on a one-on-one meeting.
okay.
Can I make an announcement?
Please.
There's a rolling car show, and their first one was last Saturday, very, very small. But anyway, it's going to be every Saturday from 9 to noon downtown. And I think July and August, probably through a little bit of September. But anyway, I told them that I would mention it tonight.
Oh, is this Iron Men rolling cars over, or
What?
are these Iron Men rolling cars over? Or?
No, it's different car clubs from all over the Portland area. Just roll into town and have breakfast
Oh, okay, very
with
good.
their antique cars.
Great.
So, Mr. Mayor, I only have I have 2 other people I have to call on my reports. Nancy Crushauer.
So, we're still not sure if this mic is working. It is, okay. There's 2 things I wanted to let the commission know about. One is on Thursday night from 5 to 7 here at City Hall, we have our Main Street Project Open House. And we've sent out tons and tons of emails and invitations. So you never know. The turnout is always uncertain. But anyway, we hope that you're certainly invited to come and see the latest and greatest on the plans and ask questions. The other thing I wanted to let you know about is we've, as a follow-up to the circulation study, we've done an analysis of whether or not the alleys that are along the Arch Bridge should remain open or should be closed. And our consultant is recommending that we close the alleys. It's mostly for safety issues and operational issues at that intersection, particularly when the bridge opens up again and Main Street is 2-way, trying to still fit in those funky little turns in those very, very narrow little alleys, I think could cause a lot of safety issues and confusion at that intersection. So we are going to be meeting with the downtown manager or the Main Street manager tomorrow afternoon, because we will want to engage the owners that are along those alleys, let them know about the recommendations from the analysis. And while we've already interviewed them all to identify what their needs are in those alleys, we want to go back now and let them know what the recommendation is and find out if we can, the uses they had based on those alleys, if there can be modifications made. So I wanted to make sure you are aware of that. And ultimately, I'm not sure, I think we'll probably bring it back kind of with those other alleys to have you bless the ultimate use of these rights-of-way. Okay?
Could I interject something here?
No, that was for something else.
That's here's something I meant to mention and I never have. When the TriMet buses turn onto Main Street, they really have to hold up for some car to stop far enough back that they can negotiate the turn. And this is at least true 33 comes off of 9th Street onto Main Street, I believe. It cannot stay in the extreme right lane, and I don't know if maybe the design is so fixed you can't do it, but if there's anything we can do on the curbs to facilitate the turning of buses.
Well, I know that we are not putting a curb extension at 9th for that very reason. And TriMet has been on our project team. So
Okay.
they've been reviewing, they've actually been reviewing their bus routes because there was a lot of discussion about their routes, whether or not they'd go just on Main Street, stay on Railroad, where we're going to be moving bus stops. So they've been actively involved. I can find out more if there's even it's really a trade-off there for the PEDs
It might. I mean,
versus
on a two-way street
curb
basis,
radius.
maybe 33 can actually come directly off of 99E onto Main Street, as opposed to taking its route on Railroad Avenue or something of that nature. But I've noticed that and that applies to the 99 Express one that comes right down on 10th Street as well.
Yeah, so they're engaged,
Okay.
and I think they're not going to fit perfectly on our streets. There's no doubt about that. They're going to be going over the center line, and that's the way it is in a tiny little right-of-way.
I believe Mr. Archer has a couple things, and we're done.
We're not done. I have a comment. So does
First of all, just wanted to let the commission know that we have planned 2 informational meetings for any and all interested public regarding our downtown parking plan implementation. The meeting have 2 options so that people can have the option of attending at a couple different times. The first one is Tuesday, July 26th at 6 o'clock p.m. and that will be at the Cypress Restaurant in the Oasis Room. So again, that first one is the 26th at 6 p.m. And then the second option is the next morning, Wednesday, July 27th, 10 a.m. at the Caulfield House Restaurant. And the purpose of these meetings is just, as you know, we're preparing to begin implementing some of the recommendations of the downtown parking plan that you approved last year. We've been working with Nancy's group on coordination with this downtown project, these downtown projects that are going on, just in terms of just for coordination purposes, to kind of roll those things out together. So we're sending this out to through a variety of outlets, through direct mailings, getting everybody that has a downtown physical address one of these invitations, email to a number of folks. So we're just going to be, over the next couple of days, it'll be distributed pretty widely. And so I want to make sure you're aware of that. I actually have a physical copy of that to hand you as well, just make sure you've got one of those. And then second thing, I think, were we going to mention about the spray park? Is that what we talked about, David? The Carnegie Spray Park is the renovation project is nearly complete, kind of doing the final touches. We are hopeful, if everything goes well, that we would have that up and running by Thursday night for our second concerts in the park. Not for sure, but if it goes well. If not, the worst case scenario is it'll probably be running by Friday. So we're just about done with that project. Got just a few little things to kind of finish up, and then I don't know, you might do.
If you can't finish it until Thursday at 5:30, then turn it on with the concerts in the park.
We're going to do our best.
Very good.
That's what we're shooting. What we're shooting for, and that's our hope. But it's not.
Could those 2 meetings again, the one at the Cypress and so forth, can you give me the time and the?
Sure. The one at the Cypress is on the 26th at 6 p.m.
Okay. Of course, all our commissioners are supposed to be tied up in the volunteer recognition event. Oh, that's the wrong date. That's
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
That's on a Tuesday. That's on a.
Well, my calendar's all screwed up.
Yeah, sounds
Okay,
like
there we go.
Yeah, the volunteer recognition will be 2 days after that.
Who did that?
Me. Okay. And the other one was when?
Was on the 27th at 10 a.m.
27th at 10 a.m. Okay, very good. Thank you.
I'll hand you a copy of that
Good.
invitation as well. Make sure you've got that.
And And I think Commissioner Nocita has something else.
Yeah, I would like to return to the discussion of the economic development manager. And I have to express some disappointment when I go through this discussion, and I also want to make an appeal to the City Commission to aim high on this. I had expressed the interest to the city manager in having a discussion tonight about the economic development manager position, and my interest that I have expressed on a number of occasions to have some kind of staff capability in our city as far as community design and architecture. I've attended a couple of conferences regarding the relationship between economic visioning and economic development, and I had lunch with the manager and an architect, a couple of architects now, about my interest in pursuing urban design in the city. I requested that this be an agenda item tonight. In fact, it's the reason I was insistent that we actually have a work session tonight when there wasn't one planned, because I specifically wanted to discuss this issue. So I sadly have to express disappointment that this agenda item was not scheduled. The manager replied that he would talk about the economic development manager position and allow me or allow this commission to carry on the discussion.
You still have that opportunity.
Well, I'm taking it right now.
It doesn't have to be an agenda item.
I'm just sad it had to take till 10:10, with a meeting that started at 4:30. So I'm going to pass this stuff out. I emailed this to the commission before, but the concept when I originally brought this up was creating an assistant city manager position that would be the primary responsible person for economic development, but someone who would have a skill set that included the ability to do true economic or citizen participation and inform neighborhood association proceedings with an economic development aspect to this, and someone who knew community design and architecture also. And my background in wanting to do this, I mentioned it during the Urban Renewal Commission meeting this afternoon also. I think we're all in agreement, everybody in this room, that we have a very special place in Oregon City. We have a very special place as to our history, our architectural heritage, our natural setting, our geology. It's an amazing, magnificent place that we have in Oregon City, unique in the state. I mean, we're all in agreement on that. And it would be just a marvelous thing for our community to be able to have community design, neighborhood design, architectural design that reflects the very unique place we have here in Oregon City. That kind of design proceeds from economic development. And I think that economic development decisions or architectural and design decisions should kind of be linked parse and parcel with economic development. And I, in my second meeting as a work session as a city commissioner, I started the discussion of the current hiring of an economic development manager. I wrote newspaper articles advocating for it. I lobbied my colleagues to hire an economic development manager. We did not go for a national search, which I think we should have done the first time around. So well into my third year on commission, we're finally doing that. And I thank the city manager for proceeding on this. What my initial, I've had several conversations with the manager about making this a unique selection, not just anybody. somebody who would, as part of their job description, would have the training and the sensibility as an economic development manager to do it in that very special Oregon City way, who would have sensibilities towards historic preservation, who would have sensibilities as it relates to urban design and architecture, who would have sensibilities as to do economic development that respects the natural setting that we're in. I don't think that's just anybody. The high school that I went to had a motto, aim high, and this little symbol was a little archer aiming his arrow towards the sky. And for all that we put up with on City Commission, the 95% that's a pain in the neck. It's that 5% when you make a decision, when you really do something that matters, when it really is significant and transformative. I think we're facing that opportunity right now, and I want to encourage the City Commission and the City Manager to have a discussion about making this selection of an economic development manager something that would just be amazing. And to me, what would make that choice amazing would have that specific skill set to choose somebody that would do our community and our community design and development proud. The city manager and I had lunch. The manager mentioned going fishing, and I agree. It's trying to find someone with that unique skill set. You have to cast the net very wide. During our lunchtime we had with Tim Smith of Sarah Architects, I posed that question to Mr. Smith as to whether he thought that there was somebody out there that could have that combination of both economic development knowledge and sensibility towards urban design and architecture, and he thought there would be. And I would like, in the presentation that David gave us, I don't know what, we talked about a review process and a selection process, but I want to talk about who this person's going to be, what kind of qualifications we're going to demand of that person, and to see if we can go that extra mile, take that extra step to try to find someone who's really truly unique, with both economic development and design economic development skills and design sensibility, to make sure that economic development happens, and that development happens that respects the uniqueness of Oregon City.
I'm going to make a suggestion, if I might. You haven't advertised a position yet, have you? No. Okay. And I'm not.
Well,
I don't want to put a burden on you in terms of time, but I don't think that would be necessary. Maybe make an inquiry of Vancouver, BC, and find out how they handle those. I think there are two different needs there, but maybe they can be handled simultaneously. I mean, certain aspects of their urban design is extremely good, and whether they in fact have two different positions for somebody that's involved in the design piece versus the economic development. I look more at the economic development person as a person that is able to bring businesses and so forth into Oregon City and work with businesses and advertise. The design piece, I think, is an important one, but I don't know it's necessarily the same skill set.
Well, and I had this conversation with Commissioner Nocita, and I think that if I'm going to go fishing for bull sharks, I'm not going to go down to the Willamette River, because I don't think they're there. There are a few city managers. I know a city manager who's a concert violinist. He might be the only one in the country. I don't know any assistant city managers who can create an urban design that's a stamp set of plans. But there may be a couple out there. So I want to go out there and bait this hook and fish for talent that exists in the marketplace as I know it. And with all due respect, I don't have to ask Vancouver what that market is. I know that market. I do think that it's important to put in, and I have some language here in the profile that says, in today's challenging economic environment, it's clearly an advantage for economic development professionals to fully grasp the important nexus that exists between successful local economies and the built and natural environment. Portland's Mississippi redevelopment area is an example where urban design, architecture, and even urban forestry have all had an emerging impact on attracting and sustaining jobs and capital investment within the community. These are some of the things that, short of having the commission make this appointment, which simply is not your role, at some point you have to trust that frankly, and I don't think you intended it this way, but I don't hire just anybody. When I make appointments, I haven't made any yet, so I don't have any direct proof here. But I've been pretty lucky at recruiting talented people. I think our biggest challenge is, given sort of the topsy-turvy view of our Urban Renewal Commission and the publicity we've gotten, I'm going to have to explain that you're walking into a challenge, but it's an opportunity. It's not a lion's den. There's a team of people here that want to work with you, and they want you to be successful, and they're willing to work with you together. And no, you don't have to worry about coming here and 3 months later you're on somebody's list. So I want to make sure we have the right environment to succeed, and a lot of that is going to be getting the right people. And there's no guarantees, and that we're going to get the right people. We could go through this search and it take several months, and at the end of it, I don't make an appointment because the people we have don't seem like the right ones, or I make an appointment and they don't get past the 6 months probation because it's not working out. That's the nature, that's the human element of what we do. But I think if we follow a sound process, that we will ultimately have the best chance. I mean, we've got a good profile here. We've got a fair competitive wage. We're in a market that's very competitive right now and good for employers. But Commissioner Nocita, I think your bigger question is one that I think I've sort of identified when we had goal setting, and then again in the budget, and now again here. And what it is that you are passionate about urban design, and you want somebody who's sensitive to that. And I would submit probably not just in that position, but in everything we do, day in, day out. We ask that sustainability question. We ask the question about whether it's something we can afford at the staff level. We ask that because everybody's got a budget they have to stay on. So I think maybe in the Commission's goals, if urban design and enhancing the capacity for urban design quality in Oregon City ended up being one of your goals, then I would actually sit down and design some strategies to get us there. And it probably wouldn't be a job description for this one position. It'd probably be something a little bit broader than that and have a legislative component to it. There may be an architectural committee. There may be some other overlays that we would put into our decision-making matrix, and probably a funding source somewhere to make some of that happen. So I appreciate the passion that you have, and I think you're right about a lot of the fact is that urban design and focusing on the quality in this community and the unique features we have is important. But I'm concerned about trying to find, I want a talented economic development professional, because even in the traditional sense, I have needs for that position right now, and I can keep that person busy 24 hours a day if they're willing to work that long. And I'm nervous about recrafting this yet again and waiting longer, and then Dan's gone and we have this lag time and there's nobody here. I mean, frankly, one of the projects he was working on is kind of dried up, but that doesn't mean I don't have lots of other things I want that person to be doing. And I'm looking forward to somebody coming to this position that has sort of new energy and a focus on creativity and looking at other things that maybe none of us have even thought of. That aren't in the job description, either one of our job descriptions.
I want to make some comments.
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments. I can point to right here in Oregon City of an example of the type of skill set I think would satisfy what I'm envisioning in this document, and it's Lloyd. Because Lloyd has both an MPA, Master's in Public Administration, which has the finance and economic
I'm
development.
sorry, I don't want you to say any more about that, because if that individual applies for the job, I don't want your opinion to
No, I'm not. I'm not.
influence either one of us.
No,
Well-
you shouldn't say
Well,
that.
Because
okay,
clearly
well,
that's an
let's just-
example. I understand.
Let's just say there are people out there that have,
Yes.
for example, an economic MPA degree and a degree like a master's in landscape architecture. There are people out there like that. And I was just giving Lloyd's name because he's here.
I think your point is what you stated is that what's going out. Anybody that's got that dual skill set is going to probably, and it's available, is going to respond.
Hate to tip them off, but one of the questions I'm going to ask them in my individual interviews with them is, have you looked at the Commission's goals? What do you think of them? Tell me some of your ideas for implementing them. If there weren't any, so yes, urban design emphasis is not actually expressed in our goals, but I'm going to be looking for a talented person that can do that. And there's more than one person on our staff that would be capable of doing that. And Lloyd's not directly on our staff, but he's an example of an up-and-comer who's thinking about economic development in what I would call non-traditional ways. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. I did ask Lloyd during the Earth Day thing about his landscape architecture degree, and he said he couldn't draw.
Draw a stick figure.
He couldn't draw.
But another question to ask, and I mean this is a broader discussion, but when we talk about economic development, we all have a very important role to play. And one of the things that the Commission needs to be mindful of, and I know you are, but I'm going to remind you, is to have a perception of political stability. We don't have to be politically stable, but we need to look like it. We need to talk like it and act like it. That doesn't mean we don't have differences of opinion, but we need to create an environment both for investors and for employees, potential employees, that makes them want to come here. I mean, the best and brightest people aren't going to come if we don't have an attractive environment for them. I'm a little concerned that we have an office with no window, for example. But we have a nice building.
They won't have time to look out the window.
But I'm hoping we can get them here and they'll see the charm and the potential, as I did when I came to Oregon City. And I think we have a good story to tell and a lot of things to sell.
I want to make another comment about our goals. And I probably shouldn't have been as quiet as I have about this, but since it's been raised, I do want to mention it because I will raise it when we do our next goal setting session. I had urban design in my collection of goals.
Yes, I know that.
Okay, and I was very, very, very dissatisfied with our goal setting process because the way it was run was that staff brought a complete list of goals that after the staff's goals, there was very little left for commissioners to add as commission goals. And I really disagree with that process. And
Jim, I'm sorry, I disagree with you on that.
I'm going to be very vocal next January about having the commissioners give their goals, discuss them, and then have staff add their goals.
That's fine, but just please remember that if you look back at what the staff did, I actually had conversations with them because I expressly did not want anyone to be able to say what you just said with a whole lot of merit. And so what we decided was we had a role to play, which is to make recommendations. I mean, it would be reckless for us to not make recommendations to you. So we did have some recommended goals. But if you look at the goals you had on your original list, I think it exceeded the staff's recommended goals threefold. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of room left there. Now, some of you, we invited the commission without limit to submit your ideas. I think Kathy had 4 or 5, Betty had 2, you had 25, or I don't remember how many, but some of you had more than some of you had less. Mm-hmm. But there was no restriction. All it came down to was your ability to convince each other. Because we didn't get out there and say, these are our goals, you got to do these. But we tried to be responsible to say, here's some issues that are coming down the pike that you should address. Like, for example, the water rate rollback. That would have been reckless for us not to remind you, because then you would have forgotten that to be in your goals, and then you said, well, why didn't staff remind us? And then if we remind you, it's staff-driven. It wasn't staff-driven. I just respectfully disagree that that's how it happened.
And we went through the last meeting, and the decision was, if you have 25 goals, you almost have to prioritize your 25.
Everything's a priority,
Yeah.
nothing's a
And
priority.
I thought everybody had the opportunity to do that, and you know, if one of us missed our most important goal in the process, I guess that falls upon the commissioner that did so. But I don't characterize it that way either. Yes, the staff had some, and then we added a whole bunch more, and frankly, the number of goals we had would have been impractical with our level of staff and capabilities to handle them all. We wouldn't have had the resources to do so. I think if there was one that you had there, you would have been fighting for that one. I mean, you had one dealing with the landfill, and you polled it and said, well, that's one for the Urban Renewal Commission. I mean,
And then we
so-
didn't even have a goal-setting session in January on the urban renewal
Well,
discussion.
well,
I mean, in fact, that's why I withdrew some of them, was I thought I could take them to the goal-setting session for urban renewal,
That we had
and
tonight?
that
And
we finally had tonight.
And that may be some, yeah. So anyway, I agree. I think that statement is unfair. We all had goals. We all had time, opportunities to, I don't know, convince the others that those should have gone on. And I think generally the people pulled their own goals. Any more comments? Hearing none.
Wait a minute.
Sorry, Kathy.
This is totally off the subjects, but I was downtown Saturday. My husband and I were downtown Saturday morning, and I don't know if you got a report about the gas meter thing. A woman in a wheelchair hit the gas meter at, is that 7th where the elevator comes out?
Yeah.
And knocked it off the wall, and there was gas spewing everywhere, and so we had to close the streets down, my husband and I, until the fire department came. But I don't know who needs to know about this, but we have to put some barriers around that. Yeah, I mean, it just came flying. So, yeah.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
David, could you forward us that description that you...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please close.